I don't care if you live or die, you useless old man. Those were the last words my son Michael said to me before signing the papers that condemned me to spend my final years at Sunset Manor Nursing Home in Phoenix, Arizona. What he didn't know was that this useless old man had a secret that would change his life forever. My name is Robert James Thompson. I'm 74 years old, and for 45 years I worked as a certified public accountant for the largest construction company in Arizona. Before I continue with my story, I want to thank each and every one of you beautiful souls who are here with us today. You know what? If this story is touching your heart the way I know it's going to, please do me a small favor and hit that like button. Not because I'm begging, but because stories like this need to be heard by people who understand what real family means. And if you're not already part of our Father's Advice family, please subscribe and ring that notification bell. Every single story we share here comes straight from the heart, and you are the reason we keep going. Tell me in the comments if you've lived through something similar, because believe me, you're not alone in this journey. I was born in a small town called Flagstaff, in northern Arizona, where I learned from childhood that hard work and family were the most sacred things in existence. My father, may he rest in peace, always told me, son, a man is measured by how he treats his family and by the honest sweat of his brow. Those words stayed with me my entire life. When I was just 22 years old, I came to Phoenix with $50 in my pocket and a huge dream of making something of myself. I worked during the day and studied at night for 8 years until I became a certified public accountant. It wasn't easy, my dear friends. There were nights when I fell asleep over my books, hungry, but with hope intact that someday everything would be worth it. In 1975, I got a job at Thompson Construction and Associates, which had nothing to do with me, despite the last name. It was a family business that built shopping centers and residential developments throughout the state. I started as an accounting clerk, but my dedication and honesty soon caught the attention of the owner, Mr. Richard Thompson. He took me under his wing like I was his own son. Meanwhile, I met my wife Sarah at a church social in Scottsdale. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen in my life, with those blue eyes that looked like sapphires and a smile that could light up the darkest day. We got married in 1977, and a year later our only child was born, Michael Robert. Michael was my pride and joy. From a young age he showed he was very intelligent, got straight A's, and seemed destined for great things. I gave him everything I never had: a good education, brand-name clothes, vacations, a beautiful house in North Phoenix. When he turned 18, I bought him his first car, a brand-new Honda Civic that cost me 3 years of savings. But it was worth it to see the happiness on his face. My son was going to be somebody important in life. He was going to have everything his father couldn't give him. He studied business administration at Arizona State University. Every month I sent him $3,000 for his expenses, money I saved by working overtime and weekends. Have you ever felt that unconditional love of a parent, that need to give everything to a child even if you're left with nothing? Because that was exactly what I felt for Michael. Every sacrifice was worth it if he could have a better life than mine. But as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I was about to find that out in the most painful way possible. In 1995, when Michael was 17, my wife Sarah began to feel sick. At first we thought it was fatigue, but the test revealed something that broke our hearts: advanced breast cancer. The doctors told us she had between 6 months and 2 years to live. Those were the most difficult years of my existence. I worked during the day to keep up with household expenses and Michael's college tuition, and at night I took care of my wife. The treatments were expensive, very expensive. I had to sell our car, pawn Sarah's jewelry, and borrow money from everyone I knew. Michael, who was already in college, seemed not to understand the gravity of the situation. He kept asking for money for his expenses as if nothing had changed. When I explained that we had to tighten our belts because of his mother's illness, he told me, "Dad, I didn't ask for Mom to get sick, but I'm not going to stop living because of it." Those words hurt me more than any physical blow I had ever received in my life. But I thought he was young, that he didn't understand, that with time he would mature and change. Sarah died on a Tuesday in April 2000, after 5 years of brave fighting against cancer. Her last words were, "Robert, take good care of our son, but don't let him take advantage of your good heart. Be careful, my love." At that moment, I didn't completely understand what she wanted to tell me, but her words were engraved in my soul like a prophecy. After the funeral, Michael graduated from college, and I expected him to come work with me, that we would start building something together. But he had other plans. He got a job at a marketing firm in Los Angeles and left without looking back. He told me, "Dad, I need to make my own life. You already made yours. See you during the holidays." And so, My son moved away physically and emotionally from me. Phone calls became sporadic, visits even rarer. I kept sending him money when he asked, because I thought maybe that way I would maintain our connection. Years passed, and I continued working at the construction company. Mr. Richard had died, and his sons ran the business, but they had great confidence in me because of my loyalty and honesty. By 2010, I was already the chief accountant and earned very well. I had managed to save a considerable amount of money and had my house completely paid off. Michael by then had married a woman named Patricia from a wealthy family in Beverly Hills. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I barely knew because they only came to Phoenix once a year, at Christmas, and those visits felt more like an obligation than a family reunion. You know what hurts most in this world? It's not rejection from a stranger, but indifference from the person you love most. Every Christmas I waited for those visits like a child waits for Santa Claus, but Michael always arrived in a hurry, checking his phone, talking about his business, about his successful life in California. My grandchildren saw me as a stranger, because that's practically what I was to them. Patricia, his wife, didn't even bother to hide her contempt. To her, I was the small-town father-in-law who didn't fit into her world of luxury and appearances. In 2015, at 67 years old, I decided to retire. The construction company owners threw me a beautiful farewell party and gave me a generous severance package. With my savings and the severance, I had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my days. But loneliness began to weigh on me. The house felt empty, too big for one man alone. That's when I started having some health problems. Nothing serious at first, just joint pain, a little high blood pressure, normal things for my age. I told Michael about my retirement and my minor health issues. His response was, "Dad, that's normal at your age. Take care of yourself and don't stress out." He didn't even ask if I needed anything or if I wanted him to visit more often. To him, I was a responsibility he hoped never to have to fully assume. In 2018, at 70, I had my first serious health scare. I fainted at the grocery store and they took me to the hospital. The doctors said it was from dehydration and stress, but that I needed to take better care of myself. I called Michael to tell him what had happened. His reaction broke my heart. "Dad, you're not young enough to be doing crazy things anymore. You should consider going to a place where they can take better care of you. A nursing home, maybe. You'd be safer there." Can you believe that my own son suggested a nursing home after a simple fainting spell? I was still perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I had all my senses and could fend for myself. But to Michael, I was already a burden, a problem he wanted to solve in the easiest way possible. The next 2 years were of a loneliness I wouldn't wish on anyone. Michael called every 2 or 3 months, always in a hurry, always with the same question, "Hey Dad, how are you?" but without really listening to the answer. His children, my grandchildren, didn't even remember I existed. In the photos I saw on Facebook, they lived a life of impressive luxury, huge houses, cars of the year, vacations in Europe. Meanwhile, I counted the days waiting for a call, a visit, a show of affection. At the end of 2019, Michael visited me without warning. He arrived on a Saturday morning with a serious face and a folder under his arm. "Dad, we need to talk," he told me without even greeting me properly. He sat in the living room and took some documents out of the folder. "I've been thinking a lot, and I think it's time for you to go to a place where they can take better care of you. You're already 72 years old, you live alone, and if something happens to you, we won't even know about it." I told him I felt perfectly fine, that I could take care of myself, that I didn't need to go anywhere. But he insisted, "Dad, it's not negotiable. I already found a very good place, Sunset Manor Nursing Home. It's one of the best in Phoenix. They have nurses 24 hours a day, activities for residents, nutritious food. You'll be better there than here alone." You know what my mistake was? Trusting that my son was acting out of love, out of genuine concern for my well-being. I didn't realize that he actually had other plans. Plans I would discover too late. After much insistence on his part and some tears on mine, I agreed to go see the nursing home. The place was nice, I have to admit that. It had spacious gardens, clean and comfortable rooms, and the staff seemed friendly. Michael had paid 6 months in advance. He told me it was an early Christmas gift, that he wanted to make sure I was well taken care of. I, like a fool, got excited thinking that finally my son was showing that he cared about me. The admission process was quick. Michael took care of all the paperwork, moving some of my belongings, talking to the doctors. I signed the documents without reading them carefully, trusting him completely. My son hugged me when he said goodbye and told me, "Dad, you're going to be very well here. You'll see. I'm going to come visit you often, and so will my kids. This is going to be good for everyone." The first few days at the nursing home weren't too bad. The staff was kind, the food was okay, and there were other residents I could talk to. But as the weeks passed, I realized that the promised visits weren't coming. Michael came only once in the entire first month, and it was a visit of barely 30 minutes. My grandchildren never showed up. Have you ever felt that sensation of abandonment when you realize that the people you love most have left you behind, like you were an old piece of furniture that no longer serves? Because that was exactly what I was feeling. Every day I waited for a visit, a call, a sign that someone remembered I existed. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, without news from my family. After 3 months at the nursing home, I decided to call Michael to ask him why he hadn't come to visit me. His response left me cold, Dad. I've been very busy with business. Besides, the nurses told me you're very well taken care of there. You don't need me coming around all the time. When I hung up the phone, I felt something break inside my heart. It wasn't just the abandonment, it was the coldness with which he treated me, as if I were a bothersome obligation. One day, while I was in the nursing home garden sunbathing, a new nurse named Emily arrived. She was a woman of about 40, very kind and caring with all the residents. When she saw me so sad, she came over to talk to me. "Mr. Thompson, why are you so down? Doesn't your family come to visit you?" I told her my situation, how my son had admitted me promising frequent visits that never came. Emily listened to me with great patience, and at the end, she told me something I will never forget, Mr. Thompson. I've worked in several nursing homes, and I've seen many cases like yours. There are children who admit their parents out of genuine love, and there are others who do it out of convenience. The first ones come to visit often. They worry about their parents' well-being, they ask about everything. The second ones disappear after the first few days, as if they had solved a bothersome problem. Her words hit me like a bucket of cold water, but at the same time, they helped me see the reality I hadn't wanted to accept. My son hadn't admitted me out of love or concern, but out of convenience. I was a hindrance in his perfect life, an uncomfortable reminder of his humble roots that didn't fit into his world of appearances. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake thinking about everything I had sacrificed for Michael, about all the dreams I had set aside to give him the best life possible. I remembered my wife's words on her deathbed, "Be careful, my love." Sarah had seen something in our son that I, blinded by paternal love, hadn't wanted to recognize. The next day, I made a decision that would change everything. I asked Emily to help me make some important phone calls. The first was to my former boss at the construction company, Mr. David, Richard's son. When I explained my situation, he was very surprised and concerned. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't know you were in a nursing home. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Your son never told us anything when he came to ask about you." My son had gone to ask about me at the construction company? That was strange, because he had never told me anything about it. I asked Mr. David to explain to me what had happened exactly. "Your son came about 2 months ago, saying that you were very sick, that you could no longer handle your financial affairs, and that he needed information about your severance and your savings to be able to help you. We told him that information was confidential, that you would have to come personally or send a notarized power of attorney." At that moment, I understood that something very serious was happening. Michael was investigating my finances without my knowledge. But why? I asked Emily to help me make another call, this time to my bank. When I spoke with the executive who handled my account, she told me something that chilled my blood. "Mr. Thompson, good thing you're calling. Your son was here last week with some documents, saying that you can no longer manage your accounts due to mental health problems. He wanted us to give him access to your accounts, but we need you to come personally to authorize any changes." There was the truth, raw and painful. Michael had not only abandoned me at the nursing home, but was trying to take over my money, using my admission as an excuse. He was declaring me mentally incapable without my knowledge, probably with the help of some corrupt doctor. That night, I cried like I hadn't cried since my wife's death. It wasn't just about the money, but about the betrayal. The son I had loved more than my own life, for whom I had sacrificed everything, had abandoned me and now wanted to steal what little I had left. How is it possible for a son to go so far? At what moment did I lose the sweet child who was once my pride and joy? But among the tears, something else was born, something I hadn't felt in a long time, an iron determination not to let myself be defeated. Michael had made a very serious mistake. He had underestimated his father. He thought that because I was in a nursing home, I no longer had resources or intelligence to defend myself. But he was completely wrong. The next day, with Emily's invaluable help, I began to plan my strategy. The first thing I did was contact a lawyer that Mr. David had recommended, Attorney James Rodriguez, specialist in family and estate law. When I told him my case, he was outraged. "Mr. Thompson, what your son is doing is a serious crime. Attempted fraud, breach of trust, and possibly even kidnapping if they prevented you from leaving the nursing home when you wanted to." Kidnapping? That word shocked me a lot. The attorney explained that if I had signed papers without fully understanding their content, especially if they had made me believe it was just for my care, when it actually included clauses that limited my freedom or access to my assets, that constituted kidnapping and fraud. We decided to start with the most important thing, recovering my freedom and protecting my estate. The attorney helped me draft a letter addressed to the nursing home management, explaining that my admission had been under false pretenses and that I wanted to leave immediately. We also did the necessary procedures to temporarily freeze my bank accounts, preventing Michael from accessing them. But I wanted something more than just protecting myself. I wanted Michael to learn a lesson he would never forget. I wanted him to understand that abandoning and betraying your father has consequences. The attorney warned me that we could proceed legally against him, but I had a different idea, an idea that would be much more effective than any legal process. You know what's the difference between revenge and justice? Revenge seeks to harm without purpose, but justice seeks to teach, to correct, to show the consequences of actions. I didn't want revenge against my son. I wanted justice. I wanted him to learn the value of family, respect for parents, and the consequences of betrayal. During my 45 years working as an accountant, I had learned many things about finances, investments, and estate management. One of the things I had done years ago when Michael was in college was to create an investment fund in his name to secure his future. But that fund had a very specific clause. It could only be collected if he proved to be a responsible person and take care of his family, especially his father. If he failed in those aspects, the money would automatically go to charitable institutions. Michael never knew about the existence of that fund, which by 2020 had grown to more than $2 million. But there was something else he didn't know either. During all those years of work at the construction company, Mr. Richard and later his sons had given me shares in various projects as bonuses for my loyalty. I had never given them importance. I saw them as gestures of gratitude rather than real investments. But with Phoenix's real estate growth, those shares were now worth a fortune. When the attorney investigated the current value of my shares, I could hardly believe the figure. More than $8 million. Without knowing it, I was a multimillionaire. But the most important thing wasn't the money, but what I could do with it to teach Michael a lesson. I decided to leave the nursing home as discreetly as possible. I didn't want Michael to find out until it was too late for him. Emily helped me tremendously throughout the process. She had become like a daughter to me, the daughter Michael had stopped being. On a Wednesday morning, while all the other residents were in their activities, Emily helped me gather my few belongings, and I left the nursing home like any visitor. My first stop was the bank, where I updated all my information and reinforced the security of my accounts. The executive explained to me that Michael had insisted a lot to obtain access. He had even brought supposed medical documents that declared him my legal guardian. But since the bank had followed the correct protocols, he hadn't achieved anything. My second stop was with Attorney Rodriguez, where we signed all the necessary documents to criminally report Michael for attempted fraud and breach of trust. But I asked the attorney to wait before filing the complaint. I wanted to give my son one last chance to redeem himself, one last chance to show if there was anything left of the good man I had raised. That afternoon, I returned to my house for the first time in 6 months. It was exactly as I had left it, which confirmed to me that Michael had never come to take care of it, or even to verify that it was okay. When reviewing my accumulated mail, I found something that filled me with indignation. Several letters from real estate companies asking if I was interested in selling my house. Someone had given them my information suggesting that I wanted to sell. It wasn't hard to guess who had done that. Michael was already making plans to get rid of my house too, probably after getting control of my bank accounts. His plan was perfect. Declare me incapable, take over my money, sell my house, and keep me locked up in the nursing home so I could never claim anything. That night, alone in my house after 6 months of absence, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I called Michael and told him I wanted to see him, that I had something very important to tell him. His response was typical of him, "Dad, what are you doing at your house? You should be at the nursing home. Did you escape? I'm coming over right now to take you back." When Michael arrived at my house that night, he came accompanied by 2 men who looked like nurses or medical staff. His plan was obvious. He was coming to take me back to the nursing home by force if necessary. But he got the surprise of his life when he saw me waiting for him in the living room, completely dressed in a suit, with all my documents organized on the table. "Dad, what does this mean?" he asked me with obvious nervousness. The 2 men who accompanied him stayed at the door, waiting for instructions. I answered him with the calmest voice I could find. "Sit down, Michael. We have to talk about many things, and this conversation is going to change our lives forever." He sat in the chair in front of me, but I could see in his eyes that he was calculating, trying to understand how I had gotten out of the nursing home and what exactly I knew. "Michael," I said, "during the last 6 months, I've had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship, on the decisions I've made as a father, and on the decisions you've made as a son." "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about," he interrupted me. "I put you in the nursing home because I love you, because I want you to be well taken care of. You can't be living alone at your age. It's dangerous." I raised my hand to stop him. "Michael, please, don't insult me with lies. I know perfectly well why you put me in the nursing home. I know about your visits to the bank trying to access my accounts. I know about the real estate agents you contacted to sell my house. I know everything." His face changed completely. The mask of filial concern fell off, and the real Michael appeared, the cold and calculating man my son had become. "Dad, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're senile, confused. That's why you need to be in the nursing home, because you can no longer handle your own life. You know what hurts most about a betrayal? It's not the act itself, but realizing that the person you thought you knew never really existed." The Michael who was in front of me wasn't my son. He was a stranger who wore his face, but had a heart completely empty of family love. "Michael," I said, "for 45 years, I worked to give you the best life possible. I paid for your best education. I gave you everything you asked for. I sacrificed my own dreams so you could fulfill yours. And this is how you repay me. You abandoned me in a nursing home to steal everything I have." He stood up, visibly agitated. "It's not stealing, it's common sense. You can no longer handle that money. You're going to end up being scammed by any crook. At least I'm your son. I have a right to that money." There was the pure and hard truth. Michael didn't see me as his father, but as an obstacle between him and my money. There was no love, no gratitude, no respect, only greed and convenience. I got up and walked to the window, turning my back on him. "Michael," I said without turning to look at him, "there's something I never told you, something I discovered after you went to live in Los Angeles. During all those years working at the construction company, Mr. Richard and his sons gave me shares in various projects. I thought they weren't worth much, but with the city's growth, those shares are now worth a fortune." I heard him quickly approach behind me. "How much, Dad? How much are they worth?" His voice had changed completely. Now there was a desperate greed that made me nauseous. I turned to face him directly. "They're worth more than $8 million, Michael. More money than you've earned in your entire life working at those marketing companies." Michael's eyes lit up with a greed that made me feel physically sick. It was like seeing a stranger, not the child I had raised with so much love. "Dad, that's incredible. With that money, we could do so many things. We could invest together. I could manage those shares so they give more returns. You're not old enough to worry about such complicated matters anymore. Did you hear that?" He didn't even have the decency to apologize for abandoning me or for trying to rob me. His only reaction was to calculate how to take over that money too. At that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I had lost my son forever, that the Michael I loved had died years ago and had been replaced by this greedy and heartless being. "Michael," I said with a calm I didn't know I had, "those shares are no longer in my name. I transferred them 3 days ago to a charitable foundation that is dedicated to caring for elderly people abandoned by their families. Every dollar of those $8 million is going to be used to give dignity and affection to people like me, who had the misfortune of raising ungrateful children." His face immediately changed from the glow of greed to absolute fury. "What did you do? What? Are you crazy? That money is mine. I'm your only son. You can't give my inheritance to strangers. I'm going to contest that transfer. You'll see that you're not going to get away with this." There it was, the naked truth. For Michael, I was only valuable for the money he could inherit. My life, my well-being, my dignity as a father, none of that mattered. Only the money he considered his, even though I was still alive, mattered. "Michael," I responded, "you can try to contest whatever you want. But that transfer was made with the help of the best lawyer in Phoenix, with all the documents in order, and with psychological evaluation that proves I'm in full mental faculties. There's nothing you can do." He approached me with an expression I had never seen on his face, a mixture of hatred and desperation that made me step back. "You have no right to do that. I worked my whole life waiting for that inheritance. I made sacrifices. I stayed away from you because I knew that someday all that would be mine." Did you hear that, dear friends? My own son admitted that he had stayed away from me calculatedly, waiting for the day of my death to collect his inheritance. There was no filial love, there was no respect, there wasn't even basic human affection, just a long-term investment waiting for payday. But wait, Michael, I said, I'm still not done telling you everything. I also donated my house to the same foundation, along with all my bank savings. In fact, the only thing I have left is my monthly pension, which is enough to live modestly in a small apartment I rented in downtown Phoenix. At that moment, Michael completely lost control. He lunged at me screaming, "How could you do this to me? How could you take away what's mine? You're a selfish and spiteful old man. I wish you had died instead of my mother. She would have understood that money is for your family." Those were the words that sealed his fate. At that moment I knew there was no going back, that any possibility of reconciliation had died forever. But I also knew I had done the right thing, that my money was being used for something worthy instead of feeding the greed of someone who no longer deserved to be called my son. The two men who had come with him approached when they saw he was out of control. "Mr. Michael," they said, "calm down. Let's go instead." But Michael couldn't calm down. He kept screaming, threatening me, telling me he was going to sue me, that he was going to have me declared crazy, that he wasn't going to leave me alone until he recovered his money. When he finally left that night, dragging his companions and shouting threats from the street, I sat in my chair, and for the first time in months I felt at peace. I had lost my son, but I had recovered my dignity. I had lost my fortune, but I had gained the tranquility of knowing that my money would serve to help people who really needed it. But you know what Michael didn't know? That I hadn't really donated all my money. That had been a white lie to teach him a lesson. In reality, I had put everything in a trust that allowed me to continue using the money during my life, and that after my death would automatically donate to charitable institutions. But while I lived, I had full access to all my resources. During the following weeks, Michael tried to fulfill his threats. He sued me, trying to declare me mentally incapable, but psychological evaluations showed I was perfectly sane. He tried to contest the supposed donations, but the lawyer I hired was so good that his lawsuits were dismissed one by one. He tried to pressure me through mutual acquaintances, but I had documented all his behavior with witnesses and recordings. But what really destroyed his plans was something he didn't expect. Emily, the nurse who had helped me so much at the nursing home, had documented everything that had happened during my stay there. The visits Michael had made to talk to doctors about declaring me incapable, the conversations he had had with other family members speaking badly about me, everything was recorded and documented. With all that evidence, Attorney Rodriguez filed a criminal lawsuit against Michael for attempted fraud, breach of trust, and abandonment of a vulnerable person. The investigation revealed that there were other similar cases, other elderly parents who had been victims of children who admitted them to take over their assets. The case reached the local media. Phoenix newspapers began talking about the son who had abandoned his father in a nursing home to steal his fortune. The company where Michael worked in Los Angeles found out about the scandal and fired him immediately. His reputation was ruined. His marriage began to wobble because his wife couldn't stand the public shame. But you know what was the hardest blow for Michael? One day, while reviewing my papers, I found something I had kept for years without giving it importance. It was a life insurance policy I had taken out when Michael was little, naming him as beneficiary. That policy, with all the accumulated interest, was worth more than $5 million. Michael had been a millionaire for years without knowing it, but because of his own greed and cruelty, he had lost the right to that money too. I called the insurance company and changed the beneficiary. Instead of Michael, the money would go to my 2 grandchildren when they turned 25, but only if they proved to be good people and maintained a respectful relationship with me. If they didn't, the money would also be donated to charitable institutions. When Michael found out about this, he came to my apartment one last time. He arrived crying, begging, promising to change, saying he now understood his mistakes. "Dad, please forgive me. I love you. It's just that I've been very stressed with work, with expenses, with pressure. Give me a chance to show you I can be the son you want." For a moment, my father's heart wanted to believe him. It wanted to think that maybe he had learned the lesson, that maybe we could rebuild our relationship. But then I remembered his words from that first night, "I wish you had died instead of my mother." I remembered the months of abandonment at the nursing home, the lies, the attempted theft. I remembered that he had come with men to take me by force. "Michael," I said, "you don't love me. You love the idea of the money you thought you were going to inherit. If I were a poor man, you never would have come to ask for forgiveness. You would have continued with your life as if I didn't exist. The problem isn't stress or pressure. The problem is that you have an empty heart where there should be love for your father." He left crying that night, but I knew they weren't tears of genuine repentance, but of frustration for having lost a fortune he considered his. The following months were of a peace I hadn't felt in years. I went back to work, not out of necessity but for pleasure, as a financial consultant for small businesses. Emily became a very dear friend who visited me regularly and helped me with household things. I made new friends in the building where I lived, older people like me who had gone through similar experiences. But most importantly, I began to rebuild the relationship with my grandchildren. Without Michael's toxic interference, I was able to contact them directly when they turned 18. At first they were confused by everything that had happened, but when I explained the complete truth to them, with documents and evidence, they understood who their father really was. My older grandson, Michael Robert, who carried my name, told me one afternoon, "Grandpa, I always knew something wasn't right. My dad always talked about you like you were a burden, but I remembered that when I was little, you were always loving with me. Now I understand why my dad didn't want us to see you." My younger granddaughter, Sarah Jane, who carried my wife's name, hugged me crying and said, "Forgive us, Grandpa. We didn't know the truth. Our dad told us you were mentally ill and that it was dangerous to visit you. We wanted to see you, but he wouldn't let us." At that moment, I understood that Michael had not only betrayed me, but had also deprived his own children of their grandfather's love. He had broken the generational chain of family affection out of pure greed. My grandchildren began to visit me regularly. I told them stories about their grandmother, about their great-grandfather, about the family traditions that Michael had abandoned. I taught them values that their father had never transmitted to them: respect for elders, the importance of family, the value of honest work. When they turned 25, both had proven to be extraordinary people. Michael Robert had become a doctor and worked at a free clinic for low-income people. Sarah Jane was an elementary school teacher at a public school in an underserved area. Both had maintained a loving and respectful relationship with me during all those years. The day they turned 25, I took them to Attorney Rodriguez's office and gave them the insurance money. $5 million for each one, but with one condition: they had to use it to do good, to help others, to continue the family tradition of honest work and community service. My grandchildren cried when they understood that their grandfather, the same grandfather their father had abandoned in a nursing home, was giving them the opportunity to change their lives and the lives of many other people. Michael Robert used his share to open a larger free clinic. Sarah Jane used hers to create a foundation that gave educational scholarships to children from poor families. And Michael? He continued living in Los Angeles, but his life was never the same again. The scandal ruined his career. His marriage ended in divorce when his wife couldn't stand the social shame, and his own children abandoned him when they learned the complete truth about what he had done to their grandfather. One day, just 2 years ago, Michael came looking for me one last time. He was finished, physically and emotionally. He had lost his job, his family, his house, his reputation. He came to ask me for financial help, not as a repentant son, but as a desperate beggar. "Dad," he told me, "I'm ruined. I have no job, no house, my children won't speak to me. I need you to help me financially. I know I made mistakes, but we're family. You have to help me." I looked him in the eyes and saw what he had become: an empty man, consumed by greed, who had lost everything that really mattered in life by chasing money that never belonged to him. "Michael," I said, "when I needed your love, you abandoned me. When I needed your respect, you humiliated me. When I needed your care, you locked me in a nursing home to rob me. Now you come to ask for help not because you love me, but because you need money. The answer is no." "But Dad," he insisted, "I'm your son. You can't abandon me like this." "You're not my son," I replied. "My son died many years ago, the day he decided his father was worth less than a bank account. You are just a stranger who carries my son's name. He left without saying another word. I have never seen him again." Today, at 76 years old, I live in peace in my apartment in downtown Phoenix. Emily is still my dearest friend and visits me every week. My grandchildren come to see me regularly with their own children, my great-grandchildren, who fill my life with joy. I have managed to rebuild the family that Michael had destroyed, but without him. You know what the moral of this story is? That karma isn't a mysterious force of the universe. It's simply the consequences of our actions. Michael reaped exactly what he sowed: abandonment, betrayal, loneliness, and financial ruin. But I also reaped what I sowed: decades of honest work, genuine love for family, and solid principles that gave me the strength to face betrayal and come out ahead. People ask me if I regret being so hard on Michael, if I don't feel sorry for his current situation. My answer is always the same. I gave him 40 years of my life. I sacrificed my dreams for his. I gave him every opportunity in the world to be a good son. He chose to be who he is now, and I chose not to allow his toxicity to continue destroying our family. My grandchildren sometimes ask me if I will ever forgive their father. I tell them that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing yourself to continue being hurt. To forgive means to free yourself from resentment so you can live in peace. I have forgiven Michael in my heart, but that doesn't mean I'm going to allow him to come back and hurt our family. The real karma of this story wasn't Michael's ruin, but the happiness I found when I learned to value myself and surround myself only with people who genuinely love me. I recovered my dignity, rebuilt my family with people who really deserved to be in it, and found a peace I had never had. To all of you listening to us who might be going through similar situations, I want to tell you that it's never too late to defend yourself from toxic people, even if they're family. Real family love is demonstrated with actions, not words. If someone is hurting you, manipulating you, or taking advantage of you using the emotional blackmail of being family, you have the right and duty to protect yourself. Don't allow anyone, not even your own children, to treat you as if you were less valuable than a bank account. You deserve love, respect, and dignity, regardless of your age or situation. And if you have to choose between being loved for your money or being respected for who you are, always choose respect. Blood doesn't make family, love and respect make family. Michael stopped being my family the day he chose money over paternal love. My grandchildren, Emily, and all the people who have shown me genuine affection, they are my real family now. If this story touched you in some way, if it made you reflect on your own family relationships, if it gave you strength to face similar situations, then it will have been worth sharing it. Leave in the comments your own experiences, your reflections, your advice for others who might be going through the same thing. Because together, sharing our stories, we become stronger. And always remember, respect is earned with actions, love is demonstrated with facts, and true family never abandons. Everything else is just empty words from people who don't deserve to be in your lives. If you feel that your own children or family members are treating you badly, don't stay silent out of fear or guilt. Seek help, defend your dignity, and surround yourself with people who truly value you. Because you, regardless of your age, deserve to be happy and respected. This has been my story. The story of a father who had to learn the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes, to save a family, you have to be willing to let go of those who are destroying it. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being here, and remember that you are never alone in your struggles. Karma came for Michael, but it came for me too, in the form of peace, dignity, and a new family built on foundations of true love. And that, dear friends, was the best revenge of all, living happily despite everything.